would now like to invite Dr. Akhil Basrai, Chief Executive Officer, Akhil Basrai Consulting, and the AICTE representative on Advisory Board GIMS to deliver the keynote address. And I take this opportunity to introduce Sir to the audience. Dr. Akhil, a university rank holder, is a gold medalist from XLRI and has to his credit a postgraduate degree in law, an advanced diploma in training and development, and a PhD. He's currently pursuing his second PhD and a master's degree in anthropology. He has 48 years of experience in leading HR in blue chip organizations like Unilever in India and Kenya, Motorola in Asia Pacific countries, Shell in Malaysia and Brunei, and IBM in India. Dr. Basrai is the past national president of National HRD Network and fellow of All India Management Association and Institute of Directors. He's an ardent wildlife enthusiast and a serious wildlife photographer. I would now like to invite Sir for the address.
Thank you. Dr. Amit Gupta ji, Dr. Anil Agarwal, Dwarka Garu, and fellow professionals, especially young students. Thank you for having me at this conference today. And it's a very important topic, and I don't want to repeat the importance of a subject, especially at this stage between interface with business and human resources. And first of all, congratulations, Dr. Gupta, for the signing up of your agreement with what you say, one of the best university. Your effort really will go a long way in promoting both GIMS as well as education in India. So congratulations, sir. I'm very happy that a very long-time friend, Dwarka Garu, who is a chairman of GSK India and a veteran HR leader of more than 50 years, around 50 years of experience, is going to cover a subject about industry and business. And I thought the topic, Dr. Sharma, that you mentioned about business and people together. So the Jugalbandi between Dwarka Garu and me, we thought he will cover the business part, and I would like to attempt to cover the people part. And like Amit ji, you mentioned that, it could be some small glitches that can upset the apple cart. Now, when I look at this subject, it reminds me of a legend. There's a bird called phoenix, which legend says that every 400 years, it sort of is supposed to be a very beautiful, large bird. It flies to the heavens and then decides in its mind whether to jump into the eternal flame and die. So this legend goes that the phoenix, every 400 years, falls into the flame, burns itself, and from the ashes comes another phoenix, a renewed phoenix. And I thought I'll use this analogy because today managing human resources is actually an opportunity like a phoenix. We got to burn something to create something new. So I would like to present my thought around that issue, that normally when a crisis happens anytime, whether it is in family or the business or whether it's in education institute, the first reaction is to steady the boat. Control damage control, as we say. I mean, don't let it go out of hand. COVID has taught us one thing, that despite all the best efforts and best education, best resources that we may have, you may still be very helpless. So steadying boat is a natural reaction which does not always work. In fact, my thought is very contrarian to this line of thinking. In my opinion, I'd like to present my thought today based on this opinion, that at a time like this, the human resources function should actually create more disruption. Not hold disruption, not control disruption, create more disruption. And I'm very serious about this, because when you create disruption, a couple of things happen. Disruption creates change, and there's no resistance to change during disruption. Somehow change becomes an integral part of moving forward, and people accept change much more readily than in a peacetime. And that change is an important part of growing. Additional disruption also becomes part of current situation. As a result of that, sometimes the time left out attending to routine mundane matters and more time left aside thinking of strategy as well as future. So you get quality time to think about something which earlier we thought we'll do it later, or it is done in a sporadic manner. Also, desperate situations call for desperate solution. So creativity starts coming in much more naturally, and we improvise solutions and decisions such a way that something new comes out automatically. And if you look at disruptions in the past, how many new companies have taken new methods when they were hit with a crisis? If you remember the dot-com burst, the financial crisis in 2007, 2008, many companies collapsed and many companies, actually small ones, grew. Is how you handle crisis becomes a boon or a bane. In my opinion, this crisis can be looked at from the HR angle. And when I say that we should break more, I would like to propose my thinking in an acronym. And the acronym is MBA. So I thought I'll use my high-tech method of using visuals. So I'm going to talk about this acronym MBA. So Amitji, this is a nice creative way of showing visuals without going into sharing screens. This is improvisation. And why it is MBA? The first part of MBA is the HR should maintain very strongly certain core things that we do, what is critical. And when I say HR, I'm not talking about HR department. It could apply to institution, it could apply to CEOs, companies, anywhere, institution, including education. Maintain certain basic things which are critical, your values, your ethical standards, your compliances, your relationship with stakeholders, both internal, which is employees or students here, or it could be external, campuses, vendors, dealers. Now, if it's a sales function, if the times are bad, that is the time to reach out to dealers and maintain the continuity. So M part of MBA is critical to maintain what is very crucial for the business and hold it rigidly. Your reputation. Times like this, people can take shortcuts. To make sure that we don't take shortcuts at time like this, because this short-term gain is seemingly more attractive than long-term damages that can happen. So maintaining certain basic things would lead to the second part of MBA, which I would say break ruthlessly. Ruthlessly, HR people or even those who are running in charge, question every processes and policies that we have today. Is it relevant? Just because we are successfully dealing with it and it has become some kind of hallmark of a practice and we have done reputation doesn't mean it's good. Even if it's good, doesn't mean it's relevant anymore. Ruthlessly break. Nothing is holy cow. There's nothing sacrosanct that cannot be broken. For example, why have annual increments? Just because it's industry practice? Because some Aon or some other people come out with a report that the industry will be giving a 7.5% increase in 2000 XYZ, and we will say, oh, we must give that because the industry is doing that. Annual increase. Why not quarterly increase? Or why increase at all? Why not for next 2 years go for profit sharing every quarter? If the company does well this quarter, we share. If the company does not do well, better luck next quarter. These are some of the things you have to challenge and break. You must have the courage to say that nothing is sacrosanct. Second, even things like, say, for example, succession planning. I mean, those of us who use an HR function or students of HR, we write volumes of succession planning, very neatly done, who will succeed, who, 1 job away, 2 job away, development plan in next 5 years, 7 years. I spent half my life with Unilever, and Dwarka Garu is an expert on this subject with his whole career with SmithKline, Beecham, and GSK, whatever name it changes. And we used to make elaborate succession plan. It was successful. I'm not criticizing for a moment. It was very successful. But today, if you look at your list of succession plan, are those names any more relevant for the future? We went by past experience, that this is how it worked in the past, and we hope it will work in the future. The disadvantage of working with the past knowledge is that you leave out all the options that are likely to come. Sometimes you're blinded. You do not know what options are available. I was reading somewhere that when Columbus landed on the shores of America, the Native Americans, Indians as they were called, did not, had never visualized that such a big boat could be on the ocean. The past experience had not prepared them to even visualize or see that such a big boats could be there. So when they saw the fleet coming in, they could not even understand that it is a fleet coming in because they had no experience to decipher what it was. Now, time like this, we have to make sure that breaking, for example, high potential list. High potential list, we keep on adding every year some names. Very reluctant to take off some names because it may take kharab lagega, especially those companies who disclose high potential will be very sheepish about removing the names. We have to now see whether those high potentials have the skill of the future. And what is the skill of the future likely to be? So far, we have appointed leaders based on gray hair or no hair type of situation. Long experience was considered as a sufficient passport to promote them to higher managerial responsibilities. I feel the younger leaders will take over, not out of goodness of heart of any management, out of sheer necessity. And because techno-managerial skill will be important, not only managerial knowledge or experience. So breaking things ruthlessly is going to be something very critical, that challenge, and that will give rise to something new. When you break something old, something new comes up. And the last part of MBA is to align with business. And this aligning with business is important because many HR people, and I'm part of the HR, so I can say this, do not understand business. They understand PAT, they understand PBT, they understand CAGR to the last decimal point. But was the business leader losing sleep over? And those students who are likely to make careers in HR must listen to this more carefully. Let's not become custodians of numbers. Let us put ourselves in the shoes of the business leader and find out what he or she is losing sleep over. What is the customer wanting at the end of it? When we ask HR people, who are your customers? They say line manager. The answer is not wrong, but it's not right either. What is the competition doing? That is the job of the strategy people. What is the market situation? Oh, that's a marketing job. I only look after people. And when we have this silo approach, we actually leave out solutions for HR. So aligning with business, and this is the time when things are totally disrupted, is a time to spend with the business leaders and say, what do you really want? Can I give you what you really want, rather than have a dhobi list of HR activities and say, ye loije, ye lije, ye lije. Not to give what we have, but to create solutions, what the business needs. Let me highlight this. We must be need-centric, business-centric solutions, not because it is a nice thing to do or because XYZ company has done it or XYZ company has been given an award for doing this. No, we must do it. This copycat approach is not going to work, especially now when the resources are going to be in the crunch. Business is not doing well. It's not a big new thing for everybody. Is it likely to improve? It'll take time. Some of the companies are already succumbing to the business cycles. And when things come to business cycle tries to improve, that is the time, crucial time to say, we must do more with less. HR people cannot rely on the basic policies. Okay, we do like this, we do like this. They have to improvise what is needed to be done and not rely on what we already have. So creativity, new approaches, business-centric approach is what it is. So my MBA theory is basically to highlight one thing, that the HR itself has to change. Those who are managing people, and I don't mean HR as only department, those who are responsible for managing people, resources in organization will have to relook at how they're handling people. We have to make employees also come out of the entitlement culture. We must get every year one increment. We must get some salary increase. If we change jobs, we must get rise of XYZ%. Students demand that we must get a job from the campus placement itself. How the campus is, how the institute doesn't have a good campus placement service. These are all mentality of entitlement. We have to wean people off this. And I'm not giving some gyan or motherhood lecture, theoretical lecture that we must do this and we must not do this. We must actually wean them out of the entitlement culture to a culture where people earn what they're doing and contribute. If you don't bring to the party, don't take anything. First, bring to the table to take away anything, period. Now, it sounds very transactional, but so it is. It is transactional. And the organization doesn't do well, does not pretend that we are able to anything, just belong to an organization. If you don't contribute to the organization, must be part of suffering that setback what the organization is suffering. I know this is very candid and blunt. Maybe Dwarka Garu, you'd like to elaborate on this when you cover the business scenario, sir. Now, part of handling during the COVID, and I'll not give any time frame to it, but I break this COVID thing from the human resources point of view into two parts. And I'll call it phase one to start with, because I don't want to say in part one up to so and so month, or likely when the crisis is over. When the crisis is over, we'll see. Let's not speculate. Phase one. In the phase one, right now people are talking about engagement. In fact, some people have gone overboard. They're ringing up employees to say, how's your dog? How's your mother-in-law? And they feel very proud that we are engaging with our people. And 3 weeks later, they ring up the same employees and say, sorry, job nahi hai, company band hone wala hai. Or we are reducing numbers. I'm not saying it's not necessary to engage. It is important to engage. But at the same time, the first staff drive efficiency. See where we can get more out of less. And is it doing this more agile operation? I like the way Amitji mentioned about this operational efficiency, whether it is logistics, whether it's supply chain, small improvement. And I love the way you mentioned, sir, that it is not big changes that make a difference. It's a small change. You also mentioned theory, which I don't know, but I'll catch up with you to learn about that. Now, this is the time to prepare the organization for a rebounce in the first phase. We cannot say, ho gaya, ab kya kare, helpless. We have to now look and say, can I prepare the organization in advance, in anticipation, proactively, prepare it for a rebound? And how can we do that? We have to identify leaders who will rebounce it. I've lived through this whole crisis in Y2K bus and .com bus in my days in Motorola, looking after 17 countries. In 5 countries, we were almost on the verge of closing down operation. Yet we invested in people. We actually hired in 3 or 4 countries, some very critical positions in advance. This is the time to prepare leaders. We have to identify which are the leaders who are agile, who are proficient enough to turn the business around, not because they work long with us. Look at their quality. So the whole assessment of high potential must change. I know this sounds like a lecture in a classroom. It is not. This is the time to identify in your high police the best of the best. So these are the people who will turn the company around. And when we have identified them, we must make sure that we invest in them. Now people say, but cut costs, why should you even hire 1 or 2 people? This is an investment. This is like buying arsenal before going to any activity of a war. This is the investment. This is not expense. And if you don't do this, when the time comes to change, we will be unprepared. What is the job of an HR function? That it is important to prepare the organization to change. And when the change slightly, business improves slightly, we must be better than competitor. And that can only happen if we have good quality people. And if we have engaged with them well, communicated them well in the phase 1, then we'll go to phase 2. In the second half, whether the recovery is U-shape or V-shape or even remains L-shape, is all guesswork. Let's not speculate. But at the same time, we have to make sure that resilience is brought in as a culture, as a training, as a way of assessing people. Are you resilient or do you break down under pressure? Are you fragile? And many leaders we have seen, some of the most experienced leaders have suddenly become helpless. And we see them like deer, when you see an animal on a highway suddenly hit by the car headlight, the animal freezes, doesn't know what to do. And this is exactly what happened to many leaders. And what we thought these leaders have solutions for everything, suddenly they're not as invincible as we thought. And those leaders also know. But there are some younger leaders who adapted very well. They reached out to people, showed empathy. They reached out to dealers, for example, They reached out to customers' outlets. They reached out to employees, reached out to stakeholders and kept connection, showed empathy. And they are the ones who will turn the company around. And that is where the style of leadership will change, in my opinion. So far, we were all tom-tomming and praising collaborative leadership, consensus-driven leadership, affiliative leadership, and we were giving gold medals to people who were doing. I'm not running it down that we should become hard, but the leaders who will do well in the future are the ones who are very clear. This is how we must do, guys. Let's do it. Those who will lead with directiveness, not authoritarian. Let me not be misunderstood. Those who show clear path, this is how we should do it. Run fast and keep up and say, here is what we need to do. People who are clear in path breaking will be the leaders who will turn around the business. And the culture will have to be changing in the sense that you have to make sure that the organization becomes different. No harm in making organization different than what we were in the past. I've got 1.5 minutes and I'll surely finish on time. The idea is to focus on future in a way that move from emergency response, which we are in now, out of necessity, to mode of resilience, to make organization a little more stronger, little more steadfast, and little more deep-rooted, so that the crisis, when it is over, is not seen as a big bump in the road. It's not a big bump in the road. It's a huge disruption. And this disruption, if we leverage it by using disruption as a force that forces us to change, that makes us change, we would have actually got something mileage out of this situation. Anticipating opportunity. And that is where I feel that managing people will be very different. Empathy, etc. And I was just writing an article that there will be 10 things that will happen in future, in my opinion. I'll only mention 1 or 2. Empathy level will actually, the senior level, go down when business changes. And I'll give you a reason why. Right now, a lot of people are showing empathy, and it is a nice thing to feel empathy and show empathy. And I commendable. I commend that and I subscribe to that. But some of the senior leaders will be under such a tremendous pressure when business cycle gets slightly improved, hockey stick starts, that they will be mentioning at that time, jab time tha, whenever there's time, I looked after you, now let's get down to business. But the opposite thing will happen at the middle level of management, at junior level. People have lived through same experience. You know, it's not easy to work from home when you have 1-bedroom house. It's not easy to work from home when people are losing jobs. Empathize with that. And they will empathize with each other that, you know, we lived through the same experience. Some of the things, technology will come in. People will, gig workers will now come in force. People will not resist reskilling to be trained in multi-skilling. All these neat boxes, the sexy boxes that we have in organization chart will disappear, will become vague. You have to do much more than what you are assigned to do on an organization chart. A purchase manager cannot say, I'll not do procurement or store management. They will have to do combine many jobs. Multi-skilling will happen, multi-task will happen. That is a different subject. But overall, let me close this, that when the times are such, we have to stand up and say, can we break things to renew? Just like the phoenix. If we have the courage to jump into the flame, and if we jump into the flame with the anticipation that we will come out much more renewed, I think people managing people will have done a great service to both organization as well as to the people in the organization. So thank you for the opportunity, Amit ji and Dr. Sharma and Dr. Anil Agarwal and Jim's management for giving me this opportunity to share my thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I would now like to invite our chief guest for the day, Mr. P. Dwarkanath, former chairman of GlaxoSmithKline India, for the address. I take this opportunity to introduce our esteemed guest to the audience. Mr. Dwarkanath brings a rich and varied experience of nearly 5 decades in the arena of leadership and human capital. He was the chairman of GSK Consumer Healthcare and Director Human Resources and Administration, India and South Asia of GlaxoSmithKline, and associated with GSK over 4 decades. He was also a member of GSK's international HR team. He has held board and advisory positions in various organizations, including some prestigious educational institutions. Till recently, he was associated with Group Human Capital of Max Group. Under his leadership and passion for building a progressive and people-centric culture, that GSK is acknowledged as one of the best places to work and has been judged as one of India's best employers for several years. His initiative to drive the new corporate culture during times of integration, such as through Simply Better Way, were benchmarks for SmithKline. He has held several management positions in the various professional bodies, like he was the president of National Human Resource Development Network. He was president of Delhi Management Association, regional president, Northern Region of All India Management Association, and treasurer of IMA. Mr. Dwarkanath has won several prestigious awards for his valuable contribution to business and also in the field of human resources and leadership development. I would now like to invite Sir to deliver the inaugural address.
Good morning to everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, Dr. Sanjila, thank you for your kind introduction. But at the outset, I would like to thank JIMS, my dear friend Akhil Basrai, whom I fondly call Akhil Bhaiya, and Dr. Amit Ji, who is not a stranger to us, and Dr. Sharma, and Amit Ji, who has been associated with NHRD for many years when I was a national president. And this is not my first visit to JIMS. I had been visited many times. I haven't addressed them. It's always good to reconnect, and for which I'm very grateful to my friend Akhil for making this happen. It's really an honor and privilege to be here today and to share some of my experiences. I think the platform has been set very well by the introduction of Dr. Sharma, followed by a very crisp and a sharp focus on business and the leadership by Amit Ji, and very well articulated with the acronym MBA by Akhil, which is quite relevant, and he highlighted a very few aspects of it, focusing on people, the leadership, and the role of the business managers as well as HR professionals dealing with people. I think, so I would like to focus on more from the business perspective as well as from a leadership perspective, because from a governance perspective, what is important from the board level and then from the leadership level at different sectors and different businesses. Let me start. I have worked in one company, associated with the company for 40 years. I have not changed my name. I have not changed my profession, but my company's name has changed 4 times or 5 times, ultimately 5 times. You see, this has happened due to transformation changes by way of restructuring, mergers, and acquisitions. This is all what Akhil Bhai has said was right. This is what we know earlier. But now what has happened, this pandemic has created another disruption, which is a transformation change, not only for the businesses, for HR or for CXOs or CEOs or for educational institutions. At the global order, there is a different global order has come. I think, which is very right when Akhil Bhai has said that, start from a macro perspective before you come very quickly. It is not something, some of them have happened due to COVID, which has accelerated. But before that, we had those macro changes which was happening globally, which is creating an impact on the business environment and people. But we did not take stock of it so seriously, which we have started taking now. When I have started my career 50 years ago, and so is Akhil in 48 or 49 years, the fact remains, I've learned 2 words at that time. How they're relevant today, I want to say. The words which we hear initially when we joined HR profession is that Garavo and strikes. And then we started learning lockouts and layoffs. Today we are talking about lockdown, unlock 1, and layoffs and furloughs, which are some of the words of first time I'm hearing in life. That is the paradigm shift in life happened, especially for youngsters, because they have not seen those eras of strikes, lockout, and garavos, or any other disruption I'm seeing in the business sense. But today, which is HR is in the business of people. I think we should be aware of it. So I think that has what impacts the business ultimately impacts the people. If you have a right kind of people, more engaged and motivated people, as Akhil said, then you have a right kind of business. First and fundamentally, we need to understand when this global disorder happened, before the COVID, the economy was in crisis, the European Union, the international immigration workforce, H-1B visa of US, which has impacted on the Indian IT industry, disruption of supply chain because of trade barriers with China and others who are the supply of the raw material. So your supply chain is impacted. But this has accelerated and it came into light to everybody started realizing in a way which is unfortunate, this sort of pandemic we do not wish to happen. Ultimately, it happened for after more than 100 years. If you ask me, I'm an expert to give a solution. I am not, as others have said it before me. We can only share our experiences, make people to make aware what is happening around and how to prepare and address. So sometimes necessity brings a transformation change. If anybody says today, this has not created a disruption, we need to take it in a positive connotation, not in a negative connotation. If you take disruption as a positive connotation, yes, this is it's a wake up, very, very big wake up call to everyone. It shook us, rocked us, but at the same time, it gives an opportunity. If you do a SWOT analysis, what it makes you feel, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, is there any opportunities, and what are the threats we need to counter, and how to move forward with this. So I want to divide my presentation by first quoting what I totally subscribe what has been said by my dear friend Akhil, but I just want to quote this, which is quite relevant to the context. The greatest danger in terms of turbulence is not the turbulence. It is to act with yesterday logic. If you act with the yesterday, this is Peter Drucker, which quoted about 50 years back, how true it is today. We said, the greatest danger in terms of turbulence is not the turbulence itself, it is to act with yesterday's logic. The point which Akhil Bhai has said earlier is universally true. First, break all rules. All rules means not to make it negative or disruptive. Excuse me. Sorry. The greatest disruption, there was a disruption here, pardon me. The greatest disruption comes, it makes you feel that you need to innovate and you need to figure out something. The greatest example you see, today we are talking about, see how people have aligned the business models. I want to talk about businesses because you see what happened. There is a global disorder, if you ask me, disruption in supply chain. We depended on many raw material from others. We did not take the Make India concept very seriously. Now we started taking, then Atmanirbhar came, be self-reliant. It cannot happen in one day. So we started thinking about three aspects, which according to me are most important aspects. One is a new ecosystem which you have developed. Yesterday we were attending one NHRD conference. There also they have done a lot of surveys based on that. They have said, what is the organizational design? What sort of organizational design you need to have? It is not just because of the COVID, but COVID helped us to accelerate our thinking and do it. Then what are our organization capabilities in terms of then what is our organization culture, which we need to have. These are the three backbones for any ecosystem to drive the business forward, to drive the motivation of the people, ultimately to make it a win-win. Please remember, when we talk about three aspects, which means that in the organization, the prime movers or the leaders, it's through its people and through its culture and to achieve the performance and the growth. If you don't get the business delivery, ultimately, if your business is not sustained, and not continued, then there's no people. So it is a chicken and egg situation. If you want to have a sustained businesses, you need to have a good people with great leadership and with an enabling and inclusive culture. This is what is important in the current context. So let me address this, what I mean by the organizational design. What is the sort of an organization design you need to have in the current context? If you want to talking about any organizational design you take, some of the models, which you think about it, for example, realignment of organization structure. And Akhil Bhai has said, first break all rules. Interestingly, Akhil, you may be aware that a book was written in 1999 by Mark Buckingham, talked about it. At that time, he never predicted that there will be a disruption of this nature. There is a disruption of this nature, but it happened. So I think, if you're not prepared for it, then it will be a challenge. Then hybrid works deployment model. I need to frankly admit, while I have articulated great policies on remote working, be it in GSK or Max, but I was never believed in it. And I always believed unless you go to workplace, you'll not be able to get the best out of the people. But now today, I need to say in the last 6 months, till I worked till 31st August with Max, I have seen how worked wonders, which I could never consider it. Because the point he was making earlier is right. We suffer, especially the elders. We have a conventional wisdom, so-called conventional wisdom. We think that is the way it needs to be done. That is why Peter Drucker said, please, turbulence time, don't think what worked yesterday will work today. It may not work. Need to redraw the whole plans. This is where the organizational design will help you to think fresh and inclusive culture. This means bring everybody into the fold. What my son calls is co-create with people. If you don't involve all of them, as has been said by earlier, whether your key stakeholders, be it your shareholders, be it your joint venture partners, your suppliers, your vendors, your distributors, apart from employees and the board, you will not be able to get it. So I think, this is a very important aspect, which I realized. So the other myth is employment models. We've all structures, organized structure, hierarchical, based on job value, job titles, and then you need to have a permanent workforce. If you don't have permanent workforce, you feel they are not committed, there will not be ownership and accountability. But that has changed a lot now. I think, we started using the gig workforce, fixed employment contracts. Incidentally, I may add, even the government, where our labor laws was very archaic based on British legislation about more than 100 years, they have taken a positive steps and changed the labor codes, which will be implemented shortly. Both the houses of parliament have approved it. They talked about fixed term contracts. Now, they've also recognized the fixed term contracts, including social security legislations. For 1 year, you pay him gratuity, which is a positive change. Even the regulators and government is also thinking that, you need to give freedom to do business, freedom to express, but at the same time, so the employment models, deployment models have changed, and organized structures have to be realigned with the considerable change in strategy and delivery models. How you delivered earlier. See, Amazon has done wonders. Do you know today, Amazon is thinking of supplying goods through drones in US. They are seeking approval of the federal government. Could we ever think about it? So who are the people ultimately when the disruption has happened? Who are the people who were said we had a hierarchy? We always thought leaders are those who run the businesses top level. That myth has been busted now. Leadership can be at all levels. With the remote working happening, the leadership responsibilities also shifted to middle levels and other levels of management, which was always a command and control situation with a possessiveness by few leaders with the so-called power-centric. It has become more people-centric. So this is one shift which has happened because we are forced to do it, because you can't control physically, you can't see every document, you can't sign it, you need to empower it. It's happened change has happened through sheer necessity. But sometimes these things help us to look at differently. Then employee productivity management. You see, when you're talking about business models, it is important how you deliver and what sort of a strategy you have ensured, what kind of people you have, what sort of leadership you have demonstrated, and what sort of a culture you have. But at the same time, productivity is important. If you start first with productivity, people may get worried. That is the general feeling, sentiments of the people. They think if your productivity means that you are reducing manpower. Productivity doesn't mean reducing manpower. Please bear in mind, if you are soft with people, it doesn't mean you can't take tough business decisions. I mean, I know Akhil Bhai has worked in good companies. They are very tough. GSK has believed in art of tough love. Take tough decisions on business, soft on people. How you deal with them is more important. So productivity, I think, I just want to give you one example because I've been told specifically focus on business side, which is very relevant. You see, cost structures will undergo a change. Business models have undergone change. For example, who thought automobile industries will do ventilators? Who thought that personal hygiene companies will do, alcoholic-based companies are doing sanitizers, liquid things, which were never accepted. Who thought Amazon will go to that level? And ultimately, the supply chain for us in the recent times, lockdown, was mom and pop shops as well as the Amazons. It is not the malls and other things what you talked about. So there is a disruption. But how do you come back with the resilience? What has been talked about, Amit ji, how do you make it happen? If you're not resilient, you won't have do it. I think it reminds me, you see, if you go since it's a JIMS, which is now been collaborating with an Ivy League, and which is a great thing to happen and must complement the management. But why it is relevant is fundamentals will never change. The way you operate the businesses, the way you think, the way you provide the leadership, you way deal with people and motivated them will keep changing. The preamble of the Constitution is sacrosanct. Equality, justice, liberty, fraternity will remain. But the basic structures will not change. Similarly, the fundamental structures, the purpose of the organization and the alignment of the people with the organization through its leadership by enabling an inclusive, agile culture. I want to use the word agility now because it is no longer when in the old, my Beecham days, if I sent a proposal to UK, it will go by courier. It takes 2 days to reach them. They read it and send it. Nothing will happen if I send it Wednesday till Monday. Today, if I send it to Amit ji or Akhil ji, it will come back in half an hour. If I am not attentive in looking into my WhatsApp, they're already, Sharma ji is talking, come on, let us come to the call. That is the position. I mean, are you able to cope up with, this is where the agility, speed to market, we used to see in FMCG, but it's happening, agility of the leaders. It is not only the leaders. The most important aspect here is, I want to now touch base on the leadership skills. Some of them have been said. How true when in a Good to Great, Jim Collins said, the two top attributes for a leader, which Amit ji also in a different sense re-emphasized, professional will to do well, which is a personal resilience through agility, through quick response, encouraging disruption to create a new environment, ecosystem. These are the things. Other thing which is important is humility. I think, which is the more higher you go, especially in the current context, when the focus has shifted from not only from a business perspective, but also in terms of people perspective. Because we never thought about wellness as a big thing. Caring organization was a big thing. The more you talked about caring, when we used to go to the campuses in mid 90s, GSK was rated as a very caring and a soft company. So people had a misimpression that means you are not very strong in performance, which is a wrong notion. It doesn't mean that you are going aggressive, doesn't mean aggressive in the markets, not with people. With people, you need to get the best out of it. The way you approach, there is different strokes for different folks. There is no one size fit all. Even in any business, what is important, how you deal with X person could be very different with that is where the role of HR in facilitating process with the CXOs and leadership will come to it. Now, what is the challenge? How do you balance between the lives and livelihood? The only suggestion I have in this context is I wish we have more CXOs from different arenas also was participating. You could have heard that word, because I am seeing from most of the HR people that business leaders are the HR also is business, but leaders are focusing when you get back to the market quickly, get back to this supply quickly. I know it's very important, but I think you need to get the balance right. This is where, you know, we need to see what is their challenges. It is not as a bias towards HR I'm talking about it. I'm talking from a chairman of an organization. If I look at it, tone at the top is important. How Amit drives it is more important than if you don't do the walk the talk, lead from the front, then, you know, it will not. Especially the third element which I'm coming is the organization culture. One is the capabilities. A leader should walk, and, you know, it needs to be. Now, earlier we were ignoring EQ. We talked about EQ, but more as a lip, except few companies. Now everybody is talking about EQ. As Akhil Bhai said very rightly, don't overdo it. Just start in how is your mother. But the fact remains that if you really care for it, the way you how you say people used to go, personal director used to go personally and hand over the gift, wedding gift. After some time, personal manager used to start going it. At that time, it was personal. Then it gone to the personal assistant. Then it was started going by courier. But I think, you know, what is important, who is going is not more important. How you present it, how do you convey your feeling and gratitude to the employee is more important. That expressing that gratitude, especially in the turbulent times, is very important as a leader. You to say this is where you call the empathy or active listening. And I said, you know, I don't want to use too many acronyms, which I learned it. 3 C's. You said, how do you connect with a communication, with a accurate database communication, which is very important, communication. Then collaboration. I said, you know, I think you have to work, coexist, you know, you have to organize as a family. That's collaboration is important, communication important, demonstrate a lot of compassion. I think, you know, this is what compassion doesn't mean leniency. That is what important. Now coming on this, you know, one of the leadership qualities people have seen is a distributed leadership. That means, as I said, from a central to decentral, you know, and how do you balance between high tech and high touch? This is one of the challenges you have it, but this is where we need to be sensible. How upskilling of people, skilling, learn, unlearn, and relearn. These are the aspects as a leader you need to, because what you learn yesterday may not hold good tomorrow. I think you need to prepare for it if you want to really survive. I think unless a businesses exist, businesses survive, people also cannot work. So there is an interdependence on people and businesses, which is inevitable. So accept, embrace the change, go with speed and agility. And last but not least, a GSK's famous catchy word is everyone committed, everyone contributing. It doesn't mean that only leaders contribute. Especially in the given context, I'm surprised to see who is the critical employees today. Today, if you ask me, the critical employees are the health workers and the delivery boys at your door, whom you never used to consider as critical to any supply chain. Now they've become part of the supply chain. So, and thirdly, now today, managing directors, most of the companies that chairmen are not going to the offices, but people at the shop floor are doing the work, which is a reality. You need to empathize with them. You need to be supportive, be compassionate with them. And secondly, it is your distributors, workforce, which are selling. in FMCG, we had this concept, unless you are at the market every day, you will not be able to drive the business. But now all this, it's a myth which we created, which has been changed. I'm not saying that you should continue this, but whenever the new normal and next normal happens, you need to have a hybrid approach, both in remote working, both in business models. What applies today may not hold good 100%. I think, there will be work from home, which will become a remote working will happen. Flexibility. I think as a leader is resilient, empathetic, flexible, agile, which makes it happening. When you are talking about remote working, one of the aspects which we need to also the 3 A's: agility, achievement, and affiliation. I think when you're working, people may also feel there is a minister in UK, is a manager to deal with isolation. People get, when you are isolated, there are some people suffer from this isolation, let me tell you, because the whole Maslow theory of hierarchy of needs has become a reverse pyramid today. What was the hierarchy of needs? The first basic need was physiological needs: food, shelter, water. Then safety and security. Third one was love and belongingness and social belongingness. Then you talked about self-actualization and self-fulfillment. But today self-esteem and self-actualization. But today the esteem and actualization has gone down. Now we are not talking about more shelter, water, risk. People are suffering from that fear. When you go back to work, some of them, let me tell you, I think, this is where as a leaders, we need to show empathy. It is not one size fits all. As long as they're fair, this is where the element of trust and credibility of leadership, which plays a very important role. So, if I see this, organization design will change, organization capabilities. Tomorrow you're talking about digital awareness, literacy. We called about the artificial intelligence, or you're talking about the machine learning. We were talking about digitalization. I don't know exactly, people talk about digitalization, but it's a reality of life, how e-commerce has developed in the recent times, which we were trying to make it happen for many years. We couldn't achieve it to that extent, what has been achieved. I think the fundamental thing is whatever good has happened in the last 6 months, we should not lose track of it. That should become the foundation for us to build our ecosystem in which we operate in terms of business models, whether it's a supply chain model, value chain model, or, dependence on the exports, and, which needs to be, encouraged, and import should be curbed. These are the things which we need to do it. So if I have to take a last few words, culture eats strategy for breakfast. This is the famous word of, but at the same time, strategy is also important, culture is also important. What is in GSK we talked about is hardwiring the soft stuff. It sounds very cliche, but I want to put it in a simple sentence. Software is our values, culture, which brings your culture, set of beliefs, which is the culture, the way we work, the way we live. The values and the hardware is the type of systems, structures, processes, procedures, strategy which you need to adopt to make those cultures happen. If a GSK has a culture, our global quest is to enhance the quality of human life by enabling people to do more, live longer and happier and healthier. It needs not a cliche statement. The way you operate the businesses, for example, gyms, if you're operating you're driving the education, how you drive in the excellence, which is the buzzword today, how do you achieve it? Which starts from the top, tone at the top is important. There's no one size fits all. If you don't measure what you're doing, ultimately, you will never succeed. That's why the saying goes by the ex-CEO of GSK, if you don't keep scoring, you are just practicing. I think ultimately what it requires is a measurements what you do. He was in a Wimbledon quarterfinalist. He was a great tennis player. I said, Dwarka, I played a lot of tennis. But ultimately what also matters is what you achieved. I think it's not only how you achieved, what you have achieved also important. I think, this is one of the things which we need to take as HR managers also should believe. It is not how you do it, but what you do it. Both are important. but ultimately delivery is important, which is sometimes is lacking. I must say, I echo what Akhil has said. I think we need to be business savvy as well in terms of understanding the nuts bolts of the business, because if you don't know the pulse of the people, it's very difficult. So to sum it up, see the paradigms, what happened. Global versus local. Okay, centralized versus decentralized. Third, rigid rules, conventional wisdom versus flexibility. Then if you talk about further, earlier performance-based is based on more effort-based, now it's more outcome-based. Then we have the fixed-term contracts versus now gig force, flexible employment. Then you have this concept of 8 hours working, punching cards, and bringing biometric evidence has moved into remote working. Their workplace extension has happened at home. And then last is this work-life balance we talked about. It has become a work-life integration. These are some of the paradigm shifts in the related to business models, or structures have changed, as I said. T-shaped skilling, which is a reskilling. T-shaped skilling. This is again I learned from my son. T-shaped skilling is talked about from multifunctional expertise. It's not only in depth in T, but also in the width you need to have. Because these are the competencies which are adaptability, flexibility, agility, emotional quotient, digital literacy, data banking, all this have become the buzzwords. But it's important, people should have. To conclude, the leader should have a 360-degree perspective. It is no longer a perspective of a solo or working in silos with a solo objective of achieving only your goals, but achieve the organization goals with a collaborative approach, which makes it happen. So ultimately what it means, change is inevitable, change is dynamic. This is one of those such changes where we came without a calling card. We were not anticipating. All our plans and first 1 year plan, 3 years plans have gone for a 6, but we quickly need to adopt. We have fairly adopted well, but I don't know how long it will continue. As people have said it, we can only predict through a predictive analysis, but it may be true, it may not be true. So let us live in the current, thinking about the future. That's what about the transformation change. To conclude, there are 4 kinds of people: people who watch things happening, people who do not know what's happening, people to whom things happen, but distinguished minority are those who makes things happen. I wish James and his students and faculty and the leadership fall in the distinguished minority category who makes things happen. The buzzword is makes things happen regardless of the situation. There is no boundaries now. All boundaries have gone, either global or local, but I think it all depends on your agility, personal resilience with compassion. I wish them all the best. I wish you will have a very meaningful and deliberate deliberations in the coming sessions. Thank you to James. Thank you, Amitji. Thank you, Akhil Bhai. Thank you, Dr. Sharma, for giving this opportunity to share my experiences. I'm neither an expert nor a specialist, but these are my experiences. In the end, I want to say, as rightly said earlier, Akhil, do not suffer from A-square syndrome. It means age and authority alone will not give wisdom. At age, this wisdom can come from a young person as well, or even from a student, which is a reverse mentoring, as long as you are the change in the mindset to accept their views and move forward. Thank you very much.
Well done.
Thank you, sir.
Excellent. Outstanding, Dr.
Absolutely.
Outstanding.
Thank you, sir. It gives us immense pleasure that you share your valuable insights into the topic, and I'm sure this will stand our students in good stead. This brings us to the end of the inaugural session. So thank you for the inaugural